Hi everyone, I am Cornelius of Voice Studio East, and this is the first episode of my intermediate singing course. Much like my beginner's course, this course is divided into two subsections. The first consisting of exercises aimed at developing the mixed voice coordination, and the second being oriented toward applying mixed voice to songs in various styles. In this first video, we are going to discuss the four basic principles of mixed voice, these being volume, compression, twang, and narrow vowels. We will start by addressing the volume. Mixed voice is most easily achieved with a moderately loud volume, being naturally louder than falsetto, but quieter than chest voice. However, this must be understood in relation to pitch. For example, a G5 in falsetto can generally get a bit louder than a G4 in chest voice. When people want to learn mixed voice, it is typically because they intend to use it to sing high in pitch. At these higher pitches, then, a moderate volume is actually fairly loud. High-pitched chest voice is found in belting and opera singing, but unless you are already a very seasoned singer, your loudest singing is probably not at operatic levels. Hence, what is moderately loud for a belter or an opera singer is probably going to be quite loud for you. In other words, instead of thinking of mixed voice as something subdued, you will be better served by thinking of it as something quite loud. As this is somewhat controversial, let us stay a bit longer on the topic. It is widely believed that loud voice usage is inherently unhealthy and that singers should use subdued volumes relying on resonance for projection. The prevalence of this view stems in no small part from a mathematical formula showing that any vibration of the vocal folds inherently produces strain proportional to the loudness and the pitch. Voice disorders are, however, not usually caused by the strain inherent in phonation, but stem instead from the unnecessary strain associated with inefficient voice usage. This word inefficient is an important clue because all else equal, efficiency is associated with loudness. As for resonance, it is not magic and cannot violate the laws of physics. Because of the conservation of energy, resonance cannot magically add volume beyond what you are producing with your vocal folds and respiratory system. So, while resonance is certainly important for projection, you also need to actually deliver the goods, by which I mean the volume. The respiratory system associated with breath support in singing is the engine that powers the voice. The ratio of loudness to the respiratory effort required is the efficiency of your voice production. In other words, highly efficient singing is when you get a lot of bang for your buck, which is to say a lot of loudness with little effort required. So when some voice teachers tell you to restrain the volume but use a lot of effort to maintain proper breath support, they are actually teaching you to make your voice usage inefficient. Of course, sheer efficiency is not the only thing we are looking for in singing. There is also stability, agility, timbre, and so on, but it should hopefully be quite clear that there is nothing particularly odd about efficient vocal technique resulting in fairly loud volumes, and that you should expect your voice to become generally louder as your technique becomes more efficient. So, to summarize about mixed voice and loudness, be sure to sing fairly loudly, but not extremely loudly when first learning mixed voice. Next up, compression. When we speak of compression in the context of mixed voice, we are referring to a slight squeezing together of the vocal folds, or in more precise terms, a slightly pressed phonation. The purpose of this is to prevent cracking into falsetto as the vocal folds stretch and thin. This does indeed make mixed voice marginally less efficient than chest voice, which is why mixed voice is often associated with requiring an increased level of breath support. But we have already discussed why efficiency is not the sole measure of good technique, so let us not belabor the point needlessly. There are various ways to add compression. We will here discuss the two I generally find most effective. Firstly, we can try adding a slight restraint to the voice. Like this! Note, though, that I am exaggerating it to make clearer what I am doing. The second method is to use vocal fry, like by adding a little bit of vocal fry at the start of each note, and holding on to that slightly squeezed quality associated with the vocal fry as you sustain the note. Regardless of which method you choose, it is important not to overdo it. Remember that this compressed quality does reduce the efficiency of the voice production, and we only need a little bit of it for mixed voice to work. Thirdly, there is twang. Now, for some reason, a lot of people seem to associate twang with a throaty, strangled sound that goes something like this. And fair enough, there is quite a bit of twang there, but there is also a whole bunch of other stuff that we don't need. Even though twang physiologically comes from a narrowing of the pharynx, it is usually helpful to think of keeping things fairly open at the same time. Therefore, keep your head raised, your mouth wide open, and try to make a sound like this. Ah! You can also try imitating a cat yowling. In case you don't know what I'm talking about, here is a short clip.
Please let me out. Okay. There's no need to yell.
It's a very memorable sound. Now, when practicing this, do not worry about preventing a voice crack. The point is not to learn mixed voice in one go, but first to acquire the basic building blocks that we will subsequently tie together into a functioning mixed voice. Simply do a twangy yowl like this and let the voice crack if it wants to. Notice how free and easy it can be. No need to get all tangled up. If you are still finding it difficult, however, here are 3 cues that might help. Firstly, you can try raising your tongue to the roof of your mouth, as when pronouncing the consonant G, and then pulling your tongue backwards. Secondly, you can try raising your larynx and pulling the base of your tongue backwards into your pharynx. Thirdly, you can try pulling your larynx backwards into your pharynx. Regardless of which cue you use, you shouldn't try to pull forcefully. That will only get you back to the throaty, strangled sound. It is not about pulling strongly, it is about finding the right place to pull. Finally, we make it to the last of the 4 principles, narrow vowels. A common instruction from voice teachers, especially those trained in speech-level singing, is to prevent the sound from going wide. This really means 2 things. Firstly, prevent your mouth from going wide, and second, close the vowels slightly. We will discuss these one at a time. Firstly, it is specifically in the horizontal direction that the mouth must be kept narrow. It should still open vertically with the pitch, so that the sound does not become excessively restrained. A common problem I see with people trying to learn mixed voice is that they will keep the mouth opening very small, lower their head, and use a strangled kind of twang mentioned earlier. This results in a sound that is extremely introverted and has either way too much compression or way too little compression, making it either very throaty or very weak. Let it be quite clear that even when singing in mixed voice, your voice should be strong. Of course, there is nothing wrong with singing tender songs in a tender way, but your core technical skills should still take a strong voice as their starting point, and at least at this stage, most of your practice time should be spent on producing a strong, clear sound. Also, the instruction to keep the mouth narrow horizontally must be understood in a relative sense. It should not be necessary to widen the mouth until the high range, but in the high range, meaning from about A4 and up, it is not only permissible but also helpful to widen the mouth a little in the horizontal direction, albeit not quite as much as you would for a chestier approach. The second part of keeping the sound narrow is to close the vowels slightly. In other words, O turns into O, A turns into A, E turns into E, and Ö turns into Ö. However, just as open vowels must be closed a little, closed vowels must be opened a little. This latter principle is, however, not a principle of mixed voice as much as a principle of high-pitched singing in general. When singing high in pitch, we need more jaw separation, and therefore the closed vowels must open slightly. In practice, what this amounts to is that the vowels in mixed voice are slightly slurred or dopey, though this dopiness is fortunately not very perceptible in the high range, where the overtones are further apart and we get less detailed auditory information about the vowels. So, to summarize, sing fairly loudly, but not extremely loudly, use some compression, but don't go overboard with it, add some twang, but don't make it strangled, and keep the vowels narrow. If you put all this together, you should be able to produce a mixed voice like this. Ooh. We will proceed to do a little exercise consisting of an R vowel sung on an arpeggio like this. Na 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 na. Try to keep in mind the principles we've discussed and see if you can get it all to come together. Here we go. Na 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 na. Now with me. Na 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 na. 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 If you couldn't quite get it to work just yet, don't fret. Keep practicing the individual components and stay tuned for subsequent episodes where we will do exercises aimed at assembling these building blocks into a functioning mixed voice. In the meantime, you can try varying the amounts of each parameter and comparing it to my example or to your favorite singers using mixed voice, and ask yourself, am I using more twang or less twang than him? Am I using too much compression, singing too quietly, and so on? And that's about it for today's video. If you have any questions, be sure to leave a comment down below. Remember to like and subscribe for more content, and as always, thanks for watching.